Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me. So, a little bit about myself. I think Hamad has already covered the basics. I did my MBA in Islamic banking and finance from Aligarh Muslim University. And prior to that, I actually have a science background. So, my bachelor's was in industrial chemistry. But during my bachelor's, I sort of developed a keen interest in finance and economics as opposed to chemical reactions, which I was, chemical reactions and different aspects of chemistry. So that's a turn I took around 7, 8 years ago. And ever since then, I have been exploring different aspects of finance, Islamic finance, of banking, of economics. And when I was in my MBA, so, at that time, there was this sense that uh, Muslims are the second largest group in India, and India is the second, third largest Muslim populated country, having 200 million Muslims. So we ought to have certain financial instruments, certain financial solutions that serve our financial needs, right? Uh, and when we go into that, I would say rabbit hole, there is an array of offerings that you can try to create in India. And unfortunately, a big chunk of it is not very viable given the circumstances in India, politically and also legally. So, for example, if you want to start a bank in India, so that requires certain changes, certain regulatory changes in the way banks operate in India. That would require certain laws to be passed in the parliament. So that obviously is a difficult process to go about, especially in the current scenario. But investing in stock market is something which is quite easily doable because the stock market, the capital market structure is already very well regulated and very well set up in India. All we have to do is just screen stocks for Sharia compliance, and then do the due diligence that any reasonable investor would do, any reasonable portfolio manager would do, and then offer those services to clients. So that is what we have been doing since a few years. But anyway, I'll get to that. So the presentation that we're going to have, it's going to be twofold. Okay, there are two aspects to this. Uh, so the first aspect is I would cover some basics of Islamic finance, Islamic banking, because that is the topic of this webinar, and I want people to be aware of the internal mechanisms of Islamic finance, of how things actually work, at least on a theoretical level. And then we'll sort of that's where I'll try to spend the first half of my presentation, and then we'll transition into you as Muslims, we as Muslims, what sort of challenges we face, in our college, in our career, in our jobs, in our businesses, what sort of decisions we need to take from a financial perspective, and then we'll also touch upon investing. So that's the flow. Okay, that is the flow. So just give me a minute. I'm presenting uh, my PPT. Hmm. So it's visible, right?
Yes, it's visible.
All right. So as I said, we'll talk about Islamic finance. We'll talk about how Islamic financial methods are different from conventional financial methods, and then we'll touch upon some modern issues with regards to career and loans and insurance and credit cards and investing. Okay. So, uh, so what are the basic principles of Islamic finance? Uh, ठीक है. So, so obviously, the underlying force or motivation behind Islamic finance is Islam itself, the religion of Islam itself, right? Now, from a fiqhi perspective or from a perspective of jurisprudence, we like to use a term called maqasid al-sharia. or the objectives of the Sharia. The Sharia is simply the rules and regulations, laws and regulations that are derived from the fundamental scripture or the fundamental sources, which is the Quran and the Hadith, right? So maqasid al-Sharia is the primary objectives of Sharia, the primary objectives of Islamic law. And that is obviously the underlying force, underlying principle behind everything that we do in Islamic finance. Okay. So let's an overview of Maqasid al-Sharia. So one of the figures that really popularized this term was Imam Ghazali, right? Who said that the objective of Sharia is to protect five things: religion, life, intellect, lineage, and property. So religion obviously includes the way we know God, the way we worship God, the way we acknowledge God, and the way we interact with other fellow human beings, the way we protect, the planet that has been bestowed upon us as an amanat. So that's religion, and then obviously protection of life is one of the most important, or one of the most primary objectives of Islam. Then intellect. uh, okay, so this is also very important because from a theological perspective, it is only through intellect that you actually perceive God. It is only through intellect that you recognize God's greatness. And not only that, but uh, like a Muslim's purpose on earth is not just to worship God in the form of prayer and fasting, but also make use of the resources that God has given us on the planet. So that includes agriculture, that includes trade and commerce, that includes science and technology. So that includes economic development as well. And all of that can only happen when we preserve and enhance our intellect. So preserving intellect, therefore, is also one of the objectives of Islamic law. A lineage and property are also, and protection of property is directly linked to Islamic finance and Islamic banking. So we'll get to that. So these are the four objectives of Sharia, right? Another very famous jurist, Abu Ishaq, he sort of summarized Maqasid al-Sharia as attainment of good and warding off of evil. And then the second line over here, which I want you guys to really focus on, that the legal ends of Islamic law are the benefits intended by the law. So the one who keeps legal form while squandering its substance does not follow the law. So you might have heard of two things, right? One is the letter of the law, the other is the spirit of the law. So we have to follow both. We cannot just follow the letter and not follow the spirit, right? So now coming to the main point. So this was Maqasid Sharia. So this is not specifically about Islamic finance. This is about the nature of Sharia itself, right? Which is the preservation of these five things: religion, life, intellect, lineage, and property. Now, out of this maqasid, you try to derive the maqasid of finance from an Islamic point of view, right? So, Islamic finance has attempted to elaborate on the objectives of wealth, objectives of mal, which is an Arabic word for wealth, as an extension to the maqasid. So, one of the contemporary scholars, they gave five objectives for the objective of wealth as an extension to the maqasid. So, the first is continuity of circulation of wealth, which avoids wealth concentration. Second is continuity of investment of wealth, which also avoids hoarding. Third is achieving comprehensive communal prosperity. So everyone in the society should do well. You see that, for example, India as a GDP is growing very well, but there is still a lot of poverty in India. So the reason the GDP is growing well, apart from the fact that overall there is, I do agree that there is economic development happening, but most of the development, most of the wealth creation, that is happening at the top 20%. There's still immense amount of poverty in India, immense amount of poverty. And I don't need to sort of give specific examples. You all, most of you, I'm assuming, have lived in India or are still living in India. So you see the level of poverty that's there in India. Similarly, not just India, even if you look at developed countries like United States or Saudi Arabia, so there's a lot of wealth, but that wealth is usually concentrated to the top 20 or 10 or 5% of the population. So that goes against the maqasid, right? So in Islamic finance, wealth distribution is very important. Wealth distribution amongst everyone from top to bottom. Obviously, it is not supposed to be equal like in a communist regime, but it is supposed to be so spread out that everyone is able to take care of their basic needs. Then financial transparency and validation of financial ownership. So I will come to that as well. So validation of financial ownership, you'll understand this once we sort of advance more into the presentation. So how does Islam achieve its monetary objectives? So Islam achieves its monetary objectives by two things. Okay, uh, the first is by saying these are the things you should do, and second is by saying these are the things you should not do. Okay, and also giving a set of rules and regulations to carry out certain commercial transactions, to carry out how commerce should be done, how investments should be done, how profit sharing should be done, how financing should be done. So in each of these things, Islam gives a very comprehensive path as to how we can carry things out, right? And in everything that we'll discuss going forward, you will see that Islam tries to protect the weak. Islam tries to protect the weak from the strong, in society, because strong can always exploit the weak. Okay, so looking at this slide, so we all know that zakat and waqf and sadaqah. So these are the three instruments that Islam has to take wealth from the wealthy and give it to the poor. And of which zakat is the most important, because that's farz, and waqf is also very important. So if you read history, if you read political history, so you will see that whenever Muslims have ruled over any piece of land, a big chunk of land and a big chunk of resources was always given by the rich people to the poor people as waqf. Even in India, right, one of the biggest land is owned by the waqf board, I think after the railways or something. But obviously that's not being put to good use. That's another issue. But waqf and zakat have always played a vital role in uh, achieving Islam's monetary objectives of communal prosperity, right? Now, secondly, by restricting certain activities, the first of which is interest, right? Riba. So you cannot pay interest, you cannot charge interest, you cannot be a witness to an interest-based transaction. So anything that has to do with interest, that is completely prohibited. Then, second is investing in prohibited business activities. So you cannot finance shar, you cannot finance wrongdoings, right? So that it sounds simple, but a lot of people actually underestimate how powerful that is. If today everyone just stopped investing in wrong businesses, a lot of the wars happening in the world will stop, right? And especially with everything unfortunately going on in Gaza and Palestine, you will see that there's a lot of boycott movements going on, right? So this is obviously based on the correct understanding that we are directly, indirectly, willingly or unwillingly investing in businesses that lead to destruction in society. And then Messer refers to gambling, and Gharar refers to uncertainty. So I'll give specific examples of what that means. So Messer and Gharar both are impermissible. And then engaging in transactions lacking material finality, that's also prohibited. So prohibition of interest, obviously, interest can be defined as money charged for using money or paying the lender the opportunity cost for foregoing spending for the duration of the loan. This is a more technical definition that we study in finance. So this is prohibited in Islam. Agar if you look at things from a purely secular, purely modern perspective, from a purely material perspective, then interest might actually seem something that is completely justified. And I'm saying that because I come from a finance background. I have studied finance. I continue to study finance. I continue to study investing. So finance, so interest is ingrained into the very fabric of the financial world. You know, so for someone coming from a conventional finance background, it is almost impossible for them to believe इंटरेस्ट के बगैर भी दुनिया हो सकती है, इंटरेस्ट के बगैर भी कुछ हो सकता है, but Islam, very clear cut, has prohibited interest. And not just Islam, but almost all major religions of the world have prohibited interest. Christianity has prohibited interest. Judaism has prohibited interest. Although it's an irony that most of the financial institutions today are run by Jews. That's another thing. But and even before these Abrahamic religions, there were Greek philosophers like Aristotle and Plato, uh, uh, you know, and Seneca. So all these Greek philosophers you see, if you read their text, so these Greek philosophers have also heavily criticized interest, and this is before Christianity. This is before Judaism. So anyway, I'm going a bit off topic over here. So Islam clearly prohibits interest, right? So a lot of people in conventional finance, they see interest as rent being charged for using money, right? But the thing is, Islam differentiates between commodity and money. In the modern worldview, there's no difference between money and commodity. Money also is a commodity, because the value of money in a fiat monetary system that we have today is purely determined by supply and demand, right? So money is also a commodity from that sense. But from an Islamic worldview, a commodity is something else, and medium of exchange, which is money, is something else. You can charge rent for commodities, like you can charge rent for house, you can charge rent for a car, you can even lend furniture, you can lend all sorts of things, but you cannot lend money. So you can charge rent on house, on car, but you're going to charge rent on money, because charging rent on money is interest. So that's prohibited, right? So in the Quran, it's prohibited. In Hadith, it's prohibited. There are multiple verses, multiple Hadiths which clearly prohibit, riba. Now, almost everything today contains riba. So I've just made a list. It probably covers everything. So bank, savings account, current account, fixed deposit, insurance. Central banks, they print money backed by debt. All of our EMIs, our monthly installments, they have interest. Loans for education, housing, car have interest. Mutual funds, especially the debt funds, they have insurance. Employee provident funds, they all have interest. So, there's a hadith that the summary of which is that even if you try to avoid interest, the dust of interest will reach you. So I think we live in that time, so sure, where even if we try to avoid, the dust of it will reach us. So, inshallah, I'll talk about how we can avoid all this as much as possible, to a reasonable extent, right? But at least we should be aware of this, right? At least we should be aware of this. And then the prohibition of gharar. So after the prohibition of interest, the second thing in Islamic finance is prohibition of gharar. So gharar means uncertainty, right? It is also described as sale of what is not present, such as fish not yet caught, crops not yet harvested. So these are definitions from classical text. Muhammad Ayub is another famous scholar in Islamic finance. He says that in the legal terminology, gharar is a sale of thing which is not present at hand, or a sale of things whose consequence is not known, or a sale involving hazard in which one does not know whether it will come to be or not. So, इसका example insurance है, which I've added there in brackets. In insurance, one of the reasons that classical scholars, they say that conventional insurance is not permissible is because insurance is selling you something which may or may not happen. If you die, your family gets this. If you don't die, you get this. If accident happens, you get this. If accident does not happen, then this happens. So, one of the things in Islamic financial contracts is things have to be very straightforward. It has to be very definitive. It cannot be contingent, because contingency leads to gharar, right? It leads to uncertainty. So this is another prohibition of Islamic finance, and you will see that a lot of financial crisis or financial disasters that have happened would not have happened if humanity followed this rule. Another is prohibition of maisir, or gambling. So gambling is basically zero sum game, where one party can only gain at the expense of other party. तो एक तो प्योर गैम्बलिंग हो गई जो आप कैसीनो में जाके करते हैं, right? If you go to casino, I've never been to casino, I've only seen it in movies, but the thing is that the whole point of casino is, there are multiple players betting money, and then they are betting on certain outcomes of a ball or a dice or a card, and whoever guesses it right, they get all the money while others lose money, right? So in a zero sum game, you only make money when others lose money. This is called messer, and messer is clearly prohibited in Islamic finance, right? And another reason that classical scholars give is that messer is prohibited on the grounds that the agreement between participants is based on the immoral inducement provided by entirely wishful hopes in the participants' minds that they will gain by mere chance, and with no consideration for the possibility of loss, right? Also, instruments that offer promise of substantial profits with minimal effort goes against the classical Islamic understanding that something of value ought to be attained by due effort, not by luck or chance, right? So I think I've covered why gambling is not allowed, and इसीलिए uh, speaking in modern context, आप लोगों में से हो सकता है बहुत लोग F&O करते हो, right? Future and options. That's all the rage in India right now. हर कोई डीमैट अकाउंट खोल के futures and options trade करता है. So that is one of the reasons that future and options are also not allowed. There are multiple reasons they're not allowed. One of which is gambling. It's a zero sum game, right? You only win a call option if the other party loses. You only win in the put option if the other party loses. So that's one of the reasons that F&O is not allowed, because it comes under the gambit of Mercer. Now, prohibition of transactions lacking material finality. So all transactions must be directly linked to a real underlying economic transaction, which excludes options and most other derivatives. Again, I think the same point is being emphasized. And another thing, for those of you who are in the finance background, I urge you to study about the 2008 global financial crisis, right? So one of the things that led to the global financial crisis was a product called CDO, right? Uh, so CDOs are derivative contracts, right? Credit default swaps. Uh, so credit default swaps basically, the underlying is not a real asset. That's what I'm trying to say. And underlying is the underlying of something else, and the underlying is one underlying is the underlying of something else, which is an underlying of something else. It creates a chain reaction. So if one party defaults, the entire chain defaults. And that is exactly what happened in the global financial crisis, that the mortgage, which was the एंड चेन, मतलब वो जो चेन थी उसके एंड में जो फाइनेंशियल एक्चुअल जो रियल इकोनॉमिक गुड था, that was basically the mortgage loans. And because the mortgage loans failed, then the entire chain of derivatives which was built on top of it, the entire chain failed. And that is how trillions of dollars were wiped out overnight from the US capital market, which triggered in a global financial crisis. So if people just followed this principle of Islamic finance, that could have been avoided. In fact, during global financial crisis, so many banks, they were under a lot of pressure, and a lot of banks went bankrupt. But during that time, Islamic banks actually showed a lot of positive resilience because they were following obviously the principles of Islamic finance. So this just shows on to this just goes on to show that the maqasid of Sharia is actually real. If you actually follow the principles of Sharia, then positive good things will happen in the economy, obviously. So, okay. So coming to Islamic finance instruments. So these are very technical terms: musharaka, mudaraba, murabaha, ijara, istisna, baysalam. These are the different instruments that Islamic financial institutions use to finance certain business activity, to finance certain purchases, to finance all sorts of activity. So I'm not going to get into it because that will take up too much of our time. If you want, you can take a screenshot of this and search up these terms on Google and learn about it. But one point I would make is one of the differences between conventional finance and Islamic finance is that in conventional finance, everything is backed by debt. आपको घर खरीदना है, take a loan. You want a phone, take a loan. You want a car, take a loan. You want XYZ, take a loan. Everything is backed by debt. But that is not supposed to be the case in Islamic finance. In Islamic finance, based on the nature of the transaction, based on the nature of the entity which is requiring the financing, you will have a customized contract, a customized financing arrangement. So if you want to buy a house, you will have a diminishing musharaka or a murabaha. If you want if a car financing or something which can be used, then you might have ijara, right? You might have ijara, because ijara is basically leasing. If you want to finance a construction project or you want to finance a manufacturing project, then you will have istisna. If you want to have an agricultural project, you want to finance agricultural products, then you will use buy salam. So for every different kind of financing, you will have istisna or ijara or salam or musharaka or mudaraba based on what your needs are. So this is the beauty of Islamic finance, and I urge you guys to read up more on it. So moving forward, so I'll just give two examples, right? Islamic purchases, Islamic finance versus conventional finance. So if you were to buy a house, what a conventional bank would do is that it will give you, for example, you want to buy a home for $100,000. So let's say the bank will give you $100,000 and will also take your home as a security, right? In case you're not able to pay back, they'll take possession of the home. And that $100,000 is what the bank gave you. The bank did not give you the house, it gave you $100,000. And that $100,000, let's say you got that at 10% interest rate. So then that 100,000 will become 110,000, which will become 121,000. So it will keep on compounding year on year if you don't pay. So the underlying is the money itself. Whereas in Islamic finance, we use something called diminishing musharaka. Most banks use murabaha, but let's talk about diminishing musharaka, but because that's ideally how it should be done. So in diminishing musharaka, what a bank will do is that the bank will not give you $100,000. It will not do that. Bank will buy the house for $100,000 for itself. Any bank will buy the house, bank will own the house. So bank will spend $100,000 and acquire the house, and then bank will rent out the house to you. Okay, and bank will say, look, the house is for $100,000. So you only pay me $100,000 if you want to buy it from me, right? And while you are paying, the house still belongs to me. The house still belongs to me. So while you are living here, you pay me the rent. So what will happen is, let's say the rent is, for example, 1% of the value for the ease of calculation, right? So agar $100,000 ka ghar hai, the house is $100,000. Let's say you pay 20% upfront, right? You paid $20,000. So what this means is that 20% of the house belongs to you, and 80% of the house belongs to the bank. So you will pay 1% as rent, but 1% of 80,000, not of 100,000, because you only pay rent for the house, for that fraction of the house which you do not own. Now, next year, let's say you pay $10,000 again. So now you own 30% of the house, and bank owns only 70% of the house. So then you will pay 1% of 70,000. And similarly, every year, your ownership on the house will keep on increasing. And bank's ownership, Islamic bank's ownership, will keep on decreasing. And as their ownership is decreasing, the rent you pay to them is also decreasing. So by the end of 10th year, you will own 100% of the house, and you will stop paying rent because now 100% of the house is yours. So let's say first year you pay $900 as rent, then you pay $800 as rent, then you pay $700 as rent. So likewise, your rent is reducing and your ownership is increasing. So this is a textbook example of how diminishing musharaka works for home financing. Similarly, vehicle financing, you might use an ijara contract that the car is, let's say, $10,000 or $30,000. So you pay me $30,000 only, but while you're using my car, you pay me rent for using that car. So do note that बहुत सारे लोग criticize करते हैं. A lot of people criticize कि this is just like conventional finance. At the end, the same thing is happening. No, it's not the same thing, because when an Islamic bank is taking ownership of the house, it is taking possession of a material, real economic object, and therefore it's also bearing the risk of ownership. When a bank is buying a vehicle and renting it out, then it is taking ownership of a real economic object and also taking the risk associated with it. And Islam permits you to profit if you're taking the risk, right? So that is difference. ठीक है, इस पे और we can go into detail, but I'll move on to the next slides. I hope I've made the point clear as how Islamic financing works versus conventional financing. A conventional financing will simply give you money and take back more money. Whereas in Islamic finance, the financier, so the bank or the Islamic finance institution, they are supposed to take ownership. Okay, they're supposed to take ownership of whatever is being financed, take the risk of that ownership, and then whatever, whether it's a rent agreement or whatever agreement, so on that basis they can then earn their revenue. That's the difference. So that was the introduction to Islamic finance and Islamic banking. Now let's come up, let me just touch upon a few modern issues. ठीक है. And I'll just give a disclaimer over here that these are not to be taken as a fatwa or anything of that nature. This is just my humble opinion, and we can have a very, very candid, very, very informal discussion on this. You guys can ask questions. So based on what I have read, based on what I have experienced in my own life, based on what I have observed, these are some of the opinions that I have. So inshallah, we can have a open discussion on this. So the first thing is choose your career wisely. There is no point of वरीइंग कि इंडिया में इस्लामिक बैंक है कि नहीं अगर हमारी खुद की इनकम जायज नहीं है. So if our own job, if our own income is not permissible, if our own job is not offering us halal income, then it's useless to think about other halal things. Like Muslims, they worry कि chicken halal है कि नहीं, but they don't worry कि उनकी खुद की salary halal है कि नहीं. So this is also something that we should look at. So avoid careers where you have to compromise your deen. As simple as that. As simple as that. Now, I or anybody cannot give you a list. These are the careers which are halal and these are the careers which are not halal. No one can give you such a black and white list. No one can give you such a black and white list. That is something that you have to figure out. Because everyone's circumstances are different, everyone's situation is different. But I'm assuming that a lot of people here are in college, a lot of people here are looking for jobs or starting new jobs, are already in jobs. So you decide, you take a judgment call whether the work that I'm doing, is it halal or not. And a lot of the times you'll not get a straight answer, because things are not black and white. It might be gray somewhere in the middle. But you have to see, is there an option for me to switch to something more halal. ऐसा नहीं है कि एक ही दिन में जॉब छोड़ के दूसरी जॉब पकड़ने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, but slowly कैन यू मेक द स्विच. Can you make the switch? For example, if you're working in a conventional bank, can you find a job in an Islamic bank in the Middle East, let's say, or within an industry? If you are in sales, I'm not saying sales is a bad thing. I think sales is fantastic. But if you are forced to sell a product which is bad for the customer, so then from an Islamic perspective, you should not be doing that. Because if you are earning money selling something which is bad for the customer, then that money is not really halal, is it? So then within that industry, can you switch to a different role where you don't have to do such things? You know, so these are the questions that you have to ask yourself, right? These are the questions you have to ask yourself, and then chart out a plan for yourself to navigate to areas which are more halal, right? Then loans. Okay. Now a lot of people talk about personal finance these days, especially on YouTube and internet. There are people running courses on personal finance. How do you take care of your personal finances? There are multiple books written on personal finance. मैं आपको इस्लामिक पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से पर्सनल फाइनेंस का सिंपल फंडा देता हूँ एक सेंटेंस में. Live within your means. That's it. Live within your means. If you live within your means, you will be fine. You don't have to worry about loans. You don't have to worry about all the haram stuff. Live within your means, and that's the best thing. And inshallah, you save up until you can afford a home. You save up until you can buy a car. If you can't afford a first-hand car, buy a second-hand car. Buy a third-hand car, right? If you can't afford a home, just rent a home. In fact, I personally, I'm just sharing my opinion. Uh, Even if I can afford a home in India, I will prefer to live on rent, because in India the rental yields are one of the lowest in the world. The rental yield in India is 3%. So why should I buy when I can just rent out for 3%? So from a financial perspective, also it makes sense to me. But anyway, so the loans are not permissible. इसमें मुझे this is not my opinion. Loans are not permissible, as it's as clear as that, because they charge interest. You know, so there's no loophole around it. Credit cards, okay. Credit cards are permissible as long as you don't accrue interest. This is because some vendors now require payment by credit card only. So it's permissible. Is this a message? Right. So credit cards are permissible as long as you don't accrue interest. This is because some vendors now require payment by credit card only. So a lot of the hotels, if you visit countries outside India, they only accept credit cards. And a lot of vendors, even in India, they only accept credit cards. So as a necessity, you have to use credit card. So use credit card, but don't spend more than your cash balance, because when you do that, so then you'll have to pay interest on it. So use it as a necessity, but make sure you don't accrue any interest on it. Okay. So that was about credit cards. Now the final sort of topic that we have for today is investing in the stock market. Now, investing in long term investing. Okay, I don't do trading. That's a different game altogether. But long-term investing in equities is the only viable option, in my opinion, to park our excess savings, which also provides liquidity. So an equity and stocks are the same thing, by the way. And equity has given higher returns than gold, debt, and real estate over long periods of time. You know, Insurance. I'll just skip that. I think I've already covered insurance. So yeah, so this is a chart of stocks versus other asset classes. So you can see over the last 32 years, you know, equities have given higher returns than gold and debt, and Indian equities have slightly outperformed the US equities. So one of the reasons I say that stocks are a good asset class to invest in, although stocks may be Sharia compliance ka issue hota hai. So we at Ethica Invest, we help our clients invest in a Sharia compliant manner. So we have our own internal team, which goes through each and every stock on the Indian stock market, and we manually screen stocks for Sharia compliance. So there are certain set of filters that we have developed: business screening, revenue screening, debt screening, liquidity screening. So we do all those screenings, and we make sure that the stocks that we are recommending to our clients are Sharia compliant. So like I'm just addressing a potential criticism to investing in stocks is, some people who have a very pure approach, or a very conservative approach, they might say, stocks में भी आधा 1% तो कुछ ना कुछ debt रहती है company में, या some like 1% of the income might not be permissible, 99% is permissible, but will you really go for stocks which are not 100% Sharia compliant? To that I would say, look, this is the best alternative, you know and this is much better than keeping money in your bank accounts. Because when you are keeping money in your bank accounts, let me tell you something. A lot of people here in India and elsewhere, they think ki bhai, we don't take interest money from our savings account. We just give that interest money to someone else. So we are not committing any sin. So we are not doing anything wrong. We are not being part of the interest-based system, because I am not taking the 2% interest that I get on my savings account. That is a wrong that's a wrong perspective. You take the interest or you don't take the interest. That is irrelevant. If your money is parked in a bank, that is the base, that is the foundation using which bank lends to other people. So whether you take interest or not is completely sort of irrelevant. As long as your money is parked in the bank, that money is being used to pump out more interest based debt into the system. you know so investing in stocks is obviously, I would say, exponentially better than keeping money in the bank and helping the financial system create more debt, create more interest. you know so from that comparative point of view, I think investing in stocks is a very viable option, and from an Islamic point of view also, it's better than keeping money in cash. You know Obviously do keep some money in cash for as an emergency fund, but majority of it should be invested in equity and also in other asset classes. I'm not saying put 100% in equity, right? Another thing I want to show you is that, so this is the Nippon India Nifty Sharia Bees ETF. So they have, National Stock Exchange, and I see they have a Sharia index as well. So you can see over the last 5 years, Nifty and Sharia index have given the same performance. In fact, the Sharia index has actually outperformed by 1%, right? So a lot of people, they think if we do Sharia based investing, then we might not make as much money as other people in the stock market. So that's actually not true. That's actually not true. So if you invest in a Sharia compliant way, even then you can make decent amount of money. So that's some of the points I wanted to sort of cover. So at Ethica Invest, we are basically an investment RA firm, a research analyst firm. We help people invest in the stock market. We provide model portfolios. So we curate out of 5,000, 6,000 stocks. We generate a list of 1,000, 1,500 stocks which are Sharia compliant. And out of that 1,500 stocks, we create a curated portfolio of 15 to 20 stocks, which you can invest in. So that model portfolio service is what we offer to our clients. So that's pretty much it, right? Uh, so you can get in touch with me. This is my contact number. I'm a very social person, so you can reach out to me directly over WhatsApp or over email. I would be happy to respond. And yeah, that's it. So if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Jazakallah, Abdullah bhai, Jazakallah. And so anyone, yeah, anyone who wishes to ask any questions, using chat, or if you wish to turn on your mic, kindly raise your hand, and we'll add you as a collaborator. And meanwhile, I will see that, I think that you've really touched upon the very fundamental aspects of Islamic finance and shared your practical insights quite well, I think. And you also mentioned Waqf earlier in the session, and I was personally quite happy about that, to see that, mention that, because Waqf and its application was the subject of my dissertation. And so that's a topic which is very close to me. And I would definitely urge those who are interested to read up more about this beautiful but sadly vanishing concept. And yeah, we did receive a lot of questions in the registration form, and a lot of questions were, I think, about the permissible options for investments. And a lot of young people have also joined this session, people who have recently started their careers. And I believe that we'll take up questions. But I think, just to start with the Q&A, I'll pose a question that I believe that most common investment trends these days, one of the most common is cryptocurrency, and a lot of young people are quite excited about it. And especially considering how volatile it gets and the buzz around it, and especially with the recent surge in crypto prices. So the interest, I think, is growing once again. So if you would like to talk about that, maybe.
Sure. So crypto is fascinating. I have been in the crypto space the last bull cycle. So now we're experiencing the second, like not the second, probably third or fourth bull cycle. Uh, Bitcoin is finally above, I think, 60,000 now, right? So as far as the permissibility of cryptocurrency is concerned, uh, plain and simple, it is permissible. There's anyone saying it's not permissible is living under a rock. I'm sorry if I'm being blunt, but there's just so much at this point in 2024. Even traditional Islamic scholars and muftis have written so many good books and dissertations and research papers on the permissibility of cryptocurrencies in Islam, that you should just go through. Like for example, Mufti Faraz Adam is one of the most known figures. I don't know him personally, but he has done really good work. So if you want to know about read up on Islamic perspectives of cryptocurrency, you should read that. So yeah, it is permissible. It's definitely permissible. Uh, but then comes the question of investment risk. Just because something is permissible does not mean that it will make a good investment. You know. So what I would say is, that, for example, the stock market, right? It's centuries old. It is centuries old. I think the first stock market was started by the Dutch in 1600s. It's more than 300 years, almost 400 years. Uh, but cryptocurrency is not even 30 years old, right? Bitcoin came about, I think, 2009, right? 2008, 2009, when Satoshi published the white paper. So this is something very new. People are still figuring things out. So a lot of volatility would be there. So just be very mindful of that. Just be very mindful of that. I think Bitcoin and Ethereum, which are the two leading cryptocurrencies, are a relatively safer bet. Again, this is not investment advice, but if I were to put my money, so I would buy Ethereum. That I believe is the safest bet, because Ethereum is the de facto blockchain for smart contracts for decentralized finance, and there are multiple blockchains which are built as layer two on top of Ethereum. So Bitcoin, and Bitcoin obviously is Bitcoin. It's the largest, cryptocurrency by market capitalization. So these are the two safe bets. And if you want to go more into altcoins, then you really require to do this full time. I have friends who are in the crypto industry, and I have seen that they clearly have an edge. वो 24 घंटा crypto ही में काम करते हैं. So there's a lot of insider trading also that happens. So all those risks are there. So if you can do it full time, and you need to do a lot of research for crypto, and the projects and the teams, and the protocols, and the tokenomics of it. If you can put that kind of effort, that's great. But if you cannot, then just try with Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Well, I think we've got a free recommendation by Abdullah Zaman by Ethica Invest.
No, that's not a recommendation.
And
That's not a recommendation.
right, so moving on to the questions,
Wait,
I think
there's
someone
a question
has.
in the chat. I'll answer.
Yes,
Hmm.
yes.
Mentioned about ownership risk, home finance and car finance. What is the risk? What is the opinion of medical insurance in a country where medical bills are exorbitant in case of illness? Excellent question. So the first question, I'll answer the first question. The risk of home ownership, right? So in a conventional bank, they don't own the home; they just give you the money. So if something happens to the home, you still have to pay back the entire loan amount. Whereas in an Islamic bank, if they have taken ownership of the car or of the home, and if something happens to the car of the home by natural causes, right, which was not your fault, then that damage will be taken on by the Islamic bank and not by you. So that is the risk, you know. Second question is more important. What is the opinion of medical insurance in a country where medical bills are exorbitant in case of illness? I think I had a slide on this. I skipped that. If you look at it from a purely Islamic perspective,
Abdullah, I think your
right?
voice is breaking a little. Yeah,
Hello.
Abdullah. Yeah, you're back.
All right. So I was talking about insurance, right?
Right.
Still audible?
Yes, yes, you're audible.
Okay. Okay. So I think, look, from a purely Islamic perspective, insurance is not permissible, because simply of the nature of the contract would be invalid in Islamic finance terms, because it's contingent on future events. And even if it wasn't, the insurance companies, they park your money in debt instruments, which is also a violation. So from that perspective, it would not be permissible. But there is something called maslaha. There is something called you know uh, looking at the circumstances in fiqh as well. So in a country where medical bills are exorbitant, you know, In that case, as a compromise, and this is my opinion, this is not a fatwa, I think term insurance for health would be something that you can do. And I'll tell you why this is. I'm very hesitant to use the word permissible, but I would say that you can use health insurance to cover your medical expenses. And I'll tell you why. And again, this is an opinion. I can be wrong on this, and I can be proven wrong by other by scholars. But I'm just giving you my opinion that uh, if you don't if you don't use health insurance in a country like America, for example, where you simply cannot survive without health insurance, right? Because the medical bills are so high that if you don't have insurance, then even if you're rich, you will lose all your riches for simple medical operations, right? So in that case, if you don't have insurance, so you will be forced to liquidate your assets to get a simple medical procedure done, or you will be forced to take money probably on interest on other from other people, or you would be forced to be in a position where your honor in society is damaged, or you will end up in such like for example, if your net worth was $500,000 and after medical expenditures your net worth is $50,000, you don't even have enough to take care of your annual expenses. सो उसमें आपकी जिंदगी का नुकसान हो रहा है, उसमें आपकी लाइफ एंड like your life and your honor are being damaged, and that goes against the maqasid sharia. you know Begging other people for money is harming your honor, and that goes against the sharia. Taking loan from other people goes against the sharia, right? So we have to weigh the pros and the cons. So that is why I say, for medical reasons, you can take medical insurance, because these people have rigged the system so bad that in certain countries where healthcare is not affordable, you have no option but to take medical insurance, because if you don't take, then you will end up violating other Islamic principles. You will end up violating other maqasid sharia. uh, you know so uh, so so in that case, I think taking health insurance is permissible. However, taking life insurance is not permissible. There's no concept of that in Islam. Like, if you lose your life, then Allah will take care of your family, and you should work to make sure that you have enough assets and enough savings that your children can use after you. So that's your responsibility. And from an Indian perspective, I'll add one more thing to it, that there are term plans and ULIP plans. In India, you have term plan and ULIP plans. Term plan is pure protection plans, and ULIP plans are protection plus investment. So ULIP plans will not be permissible because that investment is in debt instruments. So if you want to take medical insurance, take a term plan for medical insurance. So that would be on the insurance side. That's my opinion. You can ask a Mufti as well, but I think uh, uh, we can have a separate discussion on insurance. As an investment company, how are you different from Tata Ethical Fund? How much return do you achieve for your clients in 5 years of investment? So Tata Ethical Fund is a mutual fund. We are not a mutual fund. We are, in technical terms, we are an RA. RA stands for a research analyst firm. So we research companies, we research stocks in detail, and we offer you a model portfolio. So let's say you want to invest, let's say a few lakh rupees. So where would you invest that money, right? You can obviously open up a demat account in HDFC or Zerodha or wherever, but you have money, but then where do you invest that money? So we provide model portfolio of, let's say, a curated 15, 20, 25 stocks that you can put your money into, and those are the stocks that we have deeply researched. those are the stocks that we have deeply researched and tracking actively. So whenever we add a new stock to the portfolio, you will be notified, and you can add a stock to your you can add the same stock on your end as well. Whenever we exit a stock, so you can exit from the stock as well. So that is how we are different. So we are a research firm. We provide model portfolios, and for higher net worth clients, we also manage their portfolios. How much return do you achieve for your client in 5 years of investment? So look, last year we did almost 50%, but no big thing in that. Almost everyone did that much last year. Uh, but our aim is to give at least uh, s- like much higher than Nifty. So if Nifty is giving 15%, we'll try to give 20%. If Nifty is giving 20%, we'll try to give 25%. So around that range is what we try to give. We want to outperform Nifty by a decent margin, and for simpler sake of understanding, we want to double the money every 4 years. So that's a CAGR of uh, around 18-20%, right? That's what we aim. Of course, we try to do more than that, but that's the baseline that inshallah we will do. And obviously, investments are subject to market risk, so nothing is a guarantee. So that you should note. Whether it's a RA firm, advisory firm, mutual fund, start ethical fund, whatever, no one can guarantee you returns. So just make sure of that. But yeah, over a 5 year horizon, it's the best asset class to invest in. Okay. What are your views on sovereign gold bonds? Uh, just buy gold. That's what I would say. Or gold. If you want to invest in gold without having physical gold, invest in gold ETFs. In India, you have gold ETFs, so that will be an exchange traded. That will be like a stock in your demat account, but it will be backed by real physical gold. So you will have exposure to gold without having physical gold, and you don't have to pay making charges or anything like that. Best is to just buy gold ETF. You can buy it like a stock. You can sell it like a stock. You can buy gold ETFs. You can buy silver ETFs. All these things you can buy. Uh,
I have one question, if may I ask, Abdullah.
sure, sure, sure.
So we
Yeah,
complete
sure.
we completely ruling out the debt funds that makes us vulnerable to the short term investing. The option that you are telling for equities is of course very preferable when you are investing for long term. What about I want to invest it for a year and a half. Suppose I need the money for any urgent purpose or park my money in emergency fund. What options do you prefer, which would be Sharia compliant? My question to this is
Yeah, that's a good
in
question.
case
I'll
of
get back.
portfolio
Yeah,
management or sorry.
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah. That's a good question.
So I have a more allied question to this. Okay, now since we have completely ruled out this, we only are left with commodities and equities to balance our portfolio. So the third element of guaranteed returns is something that we are missing out here. Anything that you have thought on this, or do we have any option available in the market for this?
Hmm. Okay, I'll share my thoughts on this. It's a good question. First of all, in Islamic finance, we do have fixed uh, income instruments. They're not debt instruments, but they're based on what's called ijara or sukuk. So sukuk are Islamic bonds, right? They provide fixed return, but underlying asset is a real asset. It's not debt, and it's based on leasing. So sukuk would create an SPV which will lease out certain instruments with they'll get rent on it. I mean, that's a different process, but the fact is that Islamic finance does offer fixed income instruments like bonds in a Sharia compliant manner. We unfortunately don't have that in India. Like outside India, obviously, Sukuk is a huge market, but in India, we don't have that. So, how do we manage in India? So, there are multiple things we can do. Okay? Uh, First is invest. Like for example, if you want a part of your portfolio, let's say you want 30% of your portfolio to be invested in extremely low risk asset class. So, what we can do, for example, 70% of your stocks are in small cap. So you put 30% in large cap, not just any large cap, but you put in blue chip large cap. So वहाँ returns कम होंगे, returns would be very low, but the volatility would also be very low. And put it in an index style. So if a company does not do well, it will automatically be removed from from the index, and only the surviving companies which keep taking the index forward, will be included. So index investing, a lot of people don't know, is actually like momentum investing, because based on market cap, which is based on price. So that's one way that you put it in large caps. The second thing is you can buy gold and silver ETFs. So gold and silver are, very, you could say, negatively correlated, or like weak correlation with equities. So to balance the risk, you can buy gold ETFs and you can buy silver ETFs. That's another thing you can do. One more thing that you can do, I don't know how much that is possible in India, is that having something called a protective put. So if you are holding stocks for long term, you are allowed to have a put hedge. So if the stock goes up, you make money, but if the stock goes down, your put covers your loss, right? So the money you make on your put will cover for the loss. So for those who know how options work, they know what I'm saying. So those are some of the options that you expose yourself to large caps, you expose yourself to gold ETFs, you expose yourself to silver ETFs, and you buy a put option. But I think long-term puts are not available in India, and you just keep money in cash. Like if you feel that markets are overheated, if you feel that you'll need money in 6 months, I don't think you should be putting it in equities. I think you should put maybe some of it in equities, but if you really need money, then you should not put it in high risk assets. Maybe in large caps, definitely not in crypto. Okay. Uh,
Right.
okay. Any other question? Can you
Hello.
provide? Yes.
Um,
Yes.
am I audible?
Yeah.
My question is actually, you're saying about investing in stocks, and my doubt is, if you choose an ideal stock from, say, some TCS or whatever from Indian condition, interest is involved in it. If you check the cash book or whatever, the cash flow statement or whatever, so
Hmm.
then how we can assure that our what we are invested in 100% or pure interest free thing?
Right. So TCS, first of all, is not Sharia compliant according to us,
Yeah.
because almost 40% of their revenue comes from giving ID service to banking and financial service companies. So what we do when we try to, so Sana Farid has also asked a question. Can you throw some light? This I'm repeating it because the same question. Can you throw some light on Islamic capital market? Uh, okay, this is a different question. So your question was, how do we know whether shares are truly Sharia compliant? Uh, so we have a screening methodology. There's an organization called AOFI, Accounting and Auditing Organization for Islamic Financial Institutions. So AOFI basically has a group of scholars from all across the world. AOFI is a non-government, non-profit organization based out of Bahrain, but Islamic scholars from all around the world, they are part of AOFI. Uh, so they set up certain screening standards based on which you can screen stocks for Sharia compliance, and we simply use that screening standards. In fact, we have made it a bit more strict. Uh, so one thing you need to understand is that when we invest in stocks, it will never be 100% Sharia compliant. It will be 99% Sharia compliant or 98% Sharia compliant. But that 99% Sharia compliance or that 97% Sharia compliance is better, much better than keeping your money in savings account or current account. Because when you're keeping your money in bank, that money is being used, all of it is being used to lend out interest-based loans. So that is why comparatively we call this screening tolerance. So it's not 100% pure. There's a certain level of impurity that we are tolerating because all other options are even worse. You know, so that is the brutal, honest answer to your question. And the thing we do is, so there are two levels of screening. One is that the stock has to be Sharia compliant, so it has to pass certain filters in terms of its business activity, in terms of its revenue constituents, in terms of its debt levels, in terms of its liquidity levels. So only then it will be a Sharia compliant stock to invest in. So we have already cleared out most of the non-Sharia compliant elements, right? But even after that, at the end of the year, whatever profit we have earned from our stock portfolio, we give a certain portion of that in charity as a purification. So if I earned $100, maybe I'll give away, let's say for example, $5. So I'll keep $95 as profit, $5 giveaway, $5 I will give away as charity. He वो जो 1% था, which was not permissible, uh, just to purify that, I am giving it away. So that's how we do it. Another question from Sana: can you throw some light on Islamic capital market? Conventionally, as a founder of company, one either offer loan or market their product to secure different funds, or by issuing shares to investors. Another method. My question is whether it's permissible. For instance, if the investor belongs to another faith and the money is belongs, what is the permissible in this scenario? Sana, are you there? If you ask this question directly, I think I'll be able to respond and understand better what you're
Hi.
trying to say.
Hello.
Yeah, hello.
Assalamu alaikum. Uh, I
Walaikum
have
salam.
a small question, although it's not very much related to which you are discussing right now. Is there any difference investing in post offices where amount is going directly to the government in government securities and government bonds than which we are investing in other banks, which is given in debts?
So that will not be permissible because government securities are also debt securities, right? I mean, government treasury bills and treasury
I
notes.
I
Those are debt instruments.
Something which we are dealing with the governments is different from which we are dealing with public. I mean, if you are giving public money or and taking interest on that, is different what we are giving to any government, and it is giving back you some interest, some profit. Yeah.
Look, that is irrelevant. The thing is that it's a debt-based contract.
Okay.
Whether the government issues that debt or a corporation issues that debt, company issues that debt, individual issues that debt, a debt is a debt. If it's interest-bearing debt, then from an Islamic perspective, it's not permissible, no matter who
Thank.
issues it. Even if government of Saudi Arabia or even if a so-called Muslim country issues a debt-based instrument, it will not be permissible from an Islamic perspective to invest. That's my understanding of things. Maybe someone else can have a different opinion, and that's fine.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Tola, may I ask
Walaikum
you
salam. Sure,
questions?
sure.
Thank you very much for very nice presentation. I'm sure that you will lead a very good mentor for our young generation, which is the need of the hour. Uh, in Canada and in USA, most of the Sharia compliant so-called uh, offers, they are borrowing from the bank and they make it
I'm aware
Sharia
of that. Yeah,
compliant.
I'm aware of
So
that. Yeah.
certainly, what is your say on that? My second question is, like you mentioned about the Muslim countries, they offer sukuk, government debts, and they said it's halal. So, what is the view on that? And the third question to motivate the young generation on, going into the MBA in finance, which Indian universities are offering this course, and which are online available for people living outside India. Three questions. Thank you.
Okay. So first question was about. I'm aware that there are some companies in Canada who claim that they are Sharia compliant, but what they are doing is they are basically taking interest-based financing from other banks and using that money to then artificially give an image of Sharia-based financing. On one side they are doing Sharia based financing with their clients, but the money that they are getting to do that financing in the first place, that is interest based from the banks which they are getting. Right. That was your question, right?
Correct, but the
So
problem is their golden share. That is the big problem. When they
there,
paid off the rent, and they said, well, there is a delta between the purchase bought 5 years ago and today. There's a delta of $500,000. How about that? Let us share the profit. So this is a vicious cycle. You never end up paying the Sharia fund, isn't it?
so these are. I have a friend in Canada who's into real estate. Search it. So you can search him up on YouTube. He's a good friend of mine, Ali Dunio. Uh, so he has done some work busting out these fake Sharia financiers. So the reality is, well, I'm just going to say as it is, that most of these people who are claiming that they are Sharia compliant are not at all Sharia compliant. Not at all Sharia compliant. Uh, so that's just a sad reality of it. And these people have ruined or damaged the name of Islamic finance by doing all these activities. And मतलब ऐसे किस्से आपको similar stories you can hear in India also. There are people who start something in the name of Islamic finance. They're not very well regulated. They don't even know what they're doing, and they end up doing certain wrong things. But anyway, the case that you are mentioning, I have had discussions with Ali about this, and the simple reality of the matter is that these people are not Sharia compliant. Uh, Now, I cannot pinpoint any specific company. I don't think that will be appropriate here. Uh, but it's better to discuss this with a scholar in Canada itself, someone you can trust, someone you know that will not have monetary motivations, and then take matters accordingly.
Yeah, fully understood. Thank you very much. Yeah. The second is about the
The
Islamic
second is
countries.
about sukuk. So sukuk, if we go by the textbook understanding of sukuk, then sukuk are Sharia compliant instruments to invest in. So as such, there should not be any issue investing in sukuks. However, uh, most, I would not say most, but a lot of sukuks are not Sharia compliant because they say they are sukuk, but they're not sukuk the way
They are
it's supposed
government
to be.
debts.
Right, right. तो इसमें ideally क्या करना होगा? Like if I were to invest in a sukuk, I would look at the underlying structure of the sukuk. I think in a lot of cases, sukuk would turn out to be Sharia compliant. In that case, I will invest in the sukuk. And in some cases, the sukuk will turn out to be non-Sharia compliant. And in that case, I will not invest in the sukuk. So this is something that a little bit of technical knowledge of what actually makes an instrument Sharia compliant and what makes it non-compliant, a little bit of technical knowledge is required. Uh, so isme I would suggest that we can learn and educate ourselves, or we can connect with a mufti or a scholar who is well versed in Islamic finance. And let's say you want to invest in a sukuk issued by a certain government. So you take that specific sukuk, whatever the documents or the prospectus of the sukuk is, and you take it to the scholar and you present it to him. This is the sukuk. So ideally, if he's a good scholar, he should read through it, and within a day or two, he should understand whether it is Sharia compliant or not. So I cannot give a blanket answer to this, but the thing is, uh, it can be Sharia compliant, it can be not, depending on the underlying mechanism and underlying structure of how the government has structured that sukuk. If it is Sharia compliant, then you can invest.
Thank you very much. Regarding Islamic MBA, if you can throw some light.
So, can you please repeat your third question?
Uh, you know, just to motivate the youngster to go into the MBA with Islamic investment banking. I know in UK they are, few places they are offering, but in India I don't know.
Okay, so what I would say Now, look, I love talking about Islamic banking and finance because as a subject, as a Muslim, this is something that we should try to propagate and try to spread awareness about. But Islamic banks, to be honest, I'm not a fan of them because the way they operate, it's very, very questionable. Some are very good, but a lot of them they purely operate on commercial interest, not on Islamic values. So when I was doing my MBA, I used to say that there's a huge disconnect between the academia and between the practitioners of Islamic finance. People who practice it in the name of Islamic finance, they are just like a bania running a business. They care about money, whereas the academia, they care about the ideals of Islamic finance. So that disconnect, unfortunately, is there. Uh, Nevertheless, if someone wants to pursue Islamic banking and finance, which they should, because we need honest people in this field, we need hardworking people in this field, we need fresh new minds in this field, then I would suggest. Uh, Obviously, there are a lot of online resources as well, but if you want to land a career, then I would suggest pursue it from a good university in Malaysia, INSEF and Islamic University of Malaysia. These are two places. Then there is Hamid bin Khalifa University in Qatar. These two places I know offer very good programs for Islamic bank and finance. In India, where I've done from AMU, Aligarh Muslim University. That is a good program. I did it purely because of my interest, purely because I was interested in the subject. And Aligarh is my hometown, so I don't have to go anywhere. Uh, but apart from that, I would actually not recommend doing Islamic banking from India. But when I say India, I mean AMU is the only university in the entire country offering this course. But the placement support, if I'm being honest, is not excellent for Islamic banking students in AMU. So I would actually recommend someone if they really want to pursue Islamic finance, then they should pursue it from Malaysia or from Qatar. I'm just being honest.
Thank
Yeah.
Abdullah, thank you very much. By the way, I'm
Thank you so
also
much.
highly invited my engineering from AMU.
Okay, mashallah.
Inshallah, we'll be keep in
So
touch.
so
Inshallah.
you're my senior, so we'll be in
Yes,
touch definitely.
uh,
Ji,
thank you very much.
thank you so much.
Mashallah, I think we can move on to other questions as well. There's some other questions in the chat box.
Yeah, Sana had a question about raising money for a startup or raising money for a company. So her question is, Sana, if you're there and if you can directly ask the question, I think that will be better.
Yes, I'm here. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes, it's about capital market. Although the reply which you were giving earlier, the sukuk, right? The difference between the bond and the sukuk. That's one. That's my answer, I guess. One part of the question. I mean, sorry.
No, I
Can I
think
type
yeah that.
because I'm in the
Haha.
library? I'm sorry, in the library.
Acha, theek hai, I'll just answer your question. So you're basically asking, can you raise equity financing for your company, and can you like your question is ki if you're selling 10% of your company, let's say for 5 lakh rupees as an example. So you're raising 5 lakh rupees and in turn you're giving, let's say 5% of your company. So is that money halal? Because wo 5 lakh kahan se aaya? Like that person who gave you 5 lakh rupees, how do you know that their income was permissible or not? Right?
Yes, one.
That's the
Yes,
question.
yes.
So the answer to that is that it will be permissible. It will be permissible because how that person earned his income is not your concern. You simply did a transaction with him where you sold 5% of your company to him, and in return, he gave you 5 lakh rupees. It's like, for example, you're selling apples or you're selling oranges. If you sell 1 kg of orange for 100 rupees, so that transaction is permissible. Matlab, you gave 1 kg of oranges to him and he gave you 100 rupees. Your money is permissible because that 100 rupees you earned by in exchange of that oranges which you owned. Similarly, that orange is the 5% of your company, right? You gave him something that belonged to you, and he gave in exchange something that belonged to him. So for you, that money is permissible. Whether for him it was permissible or not, that's his problem, for which he will be answerable. But you, that's not on you. That onus is not on you. I hope I've answered the question.
Yes. What about incubation center established by the state? Like, for example, there are so many incubation sector being set up by the state lately for for new startups and
Again, it's
the
a
fund.
transaction. It's a transaction. So they will give you
Yeah.
certain things, and in return, maybe they'll take a stake, maybe they'll charge a fee or whatever. So as long as both parties are agreeing to the transaction, it's permissible.
Okay. Got it.
But sometimes what these incubators do, they might offer a loan, but that loan will not be permissible, obviously.
Great. So moving on, I think comes on the master question.
How to calculate
How
halal earnings out of profit generating from selling a stock? Uh, most of the if your stock was halal, then most of the profit is halal. Uh, so for this, we are actually building an app. Uh, I am hopeful that by the end of this month it should be out, or definitely by the end of next month. So if you just visit ethica.app in a month or 2 months time, that feature would be there for free. So whenever you have a stock, so it will tell you exactly how much you need to purify. We'll do all the calculations by automatically. So that feature we are building, inshallah, will take 1 or 2 months. So that will be there.
definitely, and I think we can follow your organization on social media until then, so that we
Sure,
know
sure.
exactly when it comes up.
Apart from long-term equity investment, does your company provide services for swing trading? Not exactly. I mean, we can do that. We can do that, but we don't do it because then there's a lot of hassle, you know. Like there are clients of big sizes and small sizes. So the focus really is to generate consistent returns with as less of a churn as possible. Churn, you understand, right? Buying and selling. If we just buy and sell continuously, then the clients get annoyed. Like most clients, they want to live a peaceful life and not worry about investments. So most of the investments we do are long-term investments. We don't really do swing trading. But if we do swing trading in the future, then I'll let you know. Is there any difference in investing in post office? I think I've already answered that. Do you follow stop loss in long-term equity? We do have stop loss. Not a typical price stop loss. ऐसा नहीं कि 5% गिर जाएगा तो बेच देंगे. We follow the company fundamentally. यानी for example, every quarter we will see कि company के क्या results आए. Every quarter we will read up on the company जो quarterly conference call करती है investors के साथ management, and we will see what's going on with the company. The moment we feel कि company की trajectory सही नहीं है या कंपनी की ट्रेजेक्टरी ग्रोथ से हट रही है, वी विल टेक एन एग्जिट. लॉन्ग टर्म का मतलब ये नहीं है कि करके छोड़ गए. लॉन्ग टर्म का मतलब ये नहीं कि वी जस्ट इन्वेस्ट एंड वी फॉरगेट. बट लॉन्ग टर्म मीन्स कि the thesis will take time to play out, but we are still closely following the company. So if something wrong happens, we take an exit. Is trade business insurance halal that small business can make use of? This is a very complicated topic. I think it'll take a lot of time. We can cover that sometime else. Okay, any other question?
We've also sent a feedback form, so yeah, please take out a minute and fill the feedback form, and we'll also obviously share the feedback with the Abdullah Bhai, and the feedback will also be helpful for us to plan future sessions. And if you have any
Sure.
suggestions for the community as well, feel free to write that. I think Zafar wants to know about home loan and car loans.
Yeah, I think I already covered on that. So any loan which has interest in it, so that will not be permissible. Uh, and something impermissible only becomes permissible in extreme situations when it's a matter of life and death. So that is why I said in certain countries, in certain circumstances, taking health insurance would be permissible, because if you don't take in health insurance, then the consequences that you will face is worse from even from an Islamic perspective. Just like when you don't have water, you can do tayammum. But home loan, car loan, that's not. If already taken, then what to do? If already taken, then pay it off as soon as possible. That's what I would say. Obviously, that's the most logical answer that I can give. If you have already taken the loan, then pay it off as soon as possible, and don't take on any further loans.
Right.
And yeah, that's what I can say about that.
Abdullah, recently there was a question in the community. Someone asked, is there any is there any bank or any non-banking financial corporation which offers Islamic banking products in India? So, do you have any suggestions for that?
Definitely not there in North India. In South India, I've heard a few names. Is it allowed to invest in gold ETF? Yes, it's allowed. For most of the cases, it's allowed. Some ETFs, they claim it's gold ETF, but a big chunk of it would be in debt instruments. In that case, it will not be allowed. But a typical gold ETF, which has gold, physical gold, that would be allowed. So I was answering Hamad's question. There's Takwa Credit Society in Karnataka, I think. I don't know those guys, so I cannot make any comment about whether they are legit or they are not legit. But they are a credit cooperative society under the state government. They have been operating for some time, and they only provide services uh, to to people who live in that area. I think they operate in Bhatkal and Bangalore. But we unfortunately we don't have, as I said, having Islamic banking would require certain laws to be passed in parliament with regards to how banking is conducted, which is difficult. But wake up, people, do something about it. That's what I would say. How do we
Definitely.
get capital for business from Islamic Bank? There's no Islamic Bank in India, so I cannot really answer that. But there are banks, Islamic banks outside India, which I know that they offer capital to startups based on profit sharing or some arrangement. So you can get in touch with the bank in your country, Islamic bank in your country, and have a discussion with the bank representative or the bank manager. Yes, Fahim Ahmed, please go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
I was just asking, have you looked into the Tata Ethical Fund? You had mentioned that earlier. I was hoping if
Hmm.
you could shed some light on it, if what are its constituents and all.
It's a mutual fund. It's a good option for someone who wants to invest. I personally don't agree with their Sharia screening methodology, so I don't invest. But there are certain scholars who agree with it. So I mean, it's good. There's nothing bad about it.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thanks. Yes, please go.
Hello, Swell.
Walaikum
Hello.
salam.
Yeah. So I want to ask if whether investing would be a good option in the initial stage itself. So, for example, uh, would it be preferred if we directly enter stock market at the initial stages of our salary earning time itself, or should we wait and observe and then slowly begin it?
So your question is about the stock market, right? Directly investing in the stock market. That's your question, right?
Right.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, I think you should start. Like
And if there's any
you,
suggestions, that
so I think you can start investing here. There's no point in delaying. I'm not saying start today or tomorrow, but as a principle, I'm saying that you can start. Uh, and if you don't have the time for research, so that's what we do. We help investors invest. So we provide model portfolios. So even if you don't have the time to invest, you can. We provide model portfolios. You can invest based on that. How to invest in
okay, thank you.
IPOs? Well, you can just apply for IPOs through your DMAT. Asher, yes, Asher.
Right. Ashar, you can go ahead.
So hi. So what are your thoughts on real estate investment trust? Can we invest in that?
As a principle, you can, yes. Uh, so a lot of like real estate investment funds. Uh, okay. Look, real estate investment funds, how they work is that it's a fund, and the underlying of the fund are basically two things: loans and leases on real estate. That could be residential properties, and that could be commercial properties. If it is a real estate investment trust, which is based purely on lease of commercial properties or even rental properties, but if it's purely based on lease, then it would be permissible to invest in that REIT. But if it's based on mortgages, like a lot of REITs are, so they're based on loans, if it's something like that, then it will not be permissible. So you have to look at the underlying.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
And this is something which would be easy, whether you don't have to be an expert or anything. You just, whatever REIT you are looking at, just click on the details of it and see what are the underlying of that REIT. So just one glance, in 2 or 3 minutes, you will understand whether it's compliant or not. Just a second. Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. And feel free to reach out to me in case you have any questions. So my phone number is there, my email is there. And thank you so much, Ahmad, for arranging this. It was wonderful connecting with you all. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome, sir.